PayPal CEO is going to pay someone 200K a year to manage his LinkedIn and his LinkedIn content and anything thought leadership based. It's kind of crazy where it's signaling kind of a shift where companies are now just investing heavily in their leaders as influencers. People are losing that authenticity and that creative spark that I think really makes good marketers. And it's a shame that some people just don't understand how to leverage AI. People my age, the Gen Z lot, and I'm sure it'll be the same going down. It's the same thing as just searching something up on Google. If you're not using ChatGPT, it's, you're losing out massively. If you're not doing things in the public and you're keeping things private, it's not going to add any value. Nothing will move.
So how are you doing? Have you had a good week?
Yeah, pretty good. I mean, I'm in Austin right now. I'm in like 30-degree heat, enjoying the sun. So yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah, I like Texas. Yeah, I used to go across back when I was, I used to teach golf many, many years ago when I was younger. And I used to train under a coach over in Texas.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I used to go over every few months. Yeah.
That's so random. I feel like Texas is just quite a random place for Brits to go to.
Introduce yourself and kind of a bit of your history. Tell the audience where your marketing journey started and then where you've arrived now with the company you're at now.
But yeah, I'm Tamsin. I am a content marketing manager at Hashgraph for the Hedera brand, Hashgraph brand, and several other brands. But the main ones that I focus on are Hedera and Hashgraph. Before that, I did a small contract stint at Schroders where I was sort of leading brand engagement, or I was a brand lead on one of the AI projects that they were working on in the tech team. That was only a 6-month contract though. And then before that, I was at R3, which is a similar company to where I'm at now. It's kind of in the blockchain fintech world. And I started there just as a sort of content marketing manager and then worked my way up. And then that's where I met my current CMO and one of my colleagues. So we all used to work together at a previous company and are now working together again, which is great. Like if you know the people you're working with already, I think you already know that it's going to be a good place to work. But my journey sort of started in PR. So I've always been more tailored towards PR, comms, content, everything from that side. I do enjoy media relations, but I definitely feel like my role has shifted a lot. But I started more on the media relations side in an agency where I worked with B2B tech companies. So anything from cybersecurity through to AI, through to the more boring sort of data management things, but still very important for, just how businesses operate in general. And then that's what brought me into the whole world of technology, which is what I always wanted to do. I just didn't know what I would be doing, whether it would be like sales, marketing, ops, anything like that. But I'm really glad that I ended up in the role that I am, just because, there's so much to do with content, comms, the lot.
And was that a decision to move across into content as well? Was that like
it wasn't, I wouldn't say it was a sort of obvious decision. It was kind of more of a natural transition. And also right now, so at R3, I was a lot more comms, led the PR agency side of things, but also managed the content because it was such a small team. But now I'm on a slightly bigger team. I report into the head of PR. So she's the one that's kind of leading that engagement with our PR agency and media relations, but I'm still heavily involved in it. It's just that now I do a lot more of the content, which sort of falls into a lot more social media content, more blogs. I still do op-eds or like bylines, which is PR, but yeah, it's a bigger umbrella now for content. I'm not just PR.
Yeah, so it still feeds into it. Nice. And what about crypto? Where did that come about? How did that shift into the crypto space come about?
So it was kind of once again a bit of a natural transition. So the company that I worked for was always a bit more enterprise blockchain. So it was kind of fintech. And I knew that after working in an agency, I either wanted to be in fintech or I wanted to be in cybersecurity. Fell into the fintech stuff. And then the blockchain world, which is it's kind of a bigger category and it can fall into the more enterprise regulated blockchain side of things, or it's also the crypto world. And it just so happened that by connections, like knowing my previous boss, I just fell into a blockchain company that also happens to have a token, which is why we're now in that crypto world a bit more. We still, as marketers though, we never market the cryptocurrency. That's not what we do. We don't do anything to do with price. It's all about the enterprise technology and, real world solutions. And it's still more of that B2B side of marketing.
Okay. So tell us a bit more about Hashgraph? And obviously you mentioned the different brands there as well, Hedera, but what does Hashgraph do? Do you want to give the audience a high level sort of intro?
Yeah, of course. So Hashgraph itself is kind of almost the team behind Hedera. So Hedera is the network. That's kind of what everyone knows from the crypto world. There's a token called 8bar, and that's on the Hedera network. People can trade that the way that you would any other cryptocurrency. But also Hedera has other solutions like an AI token, an AI solution, asset tokenization studio, stablecoin studios, all of these things. So these studios that people can take away and build on and create these solutions, these applications, all of those things are built by and developed and conceived by people who are working at Hashgraph. So Hashgraph is kind of the marketers, the engineers, the ops people that are driving the uptake of Hedera and people building on the Hedera network. So that's my company. But then now we're kind of also trying to drive our own company brand a bit more. So we actually rebranded last year. Yeah. It was known as Swirlds Lab. So it was always a bit more of a lab concept, got rebranded to Hashgraph. And that was because we were coming out with our own, I guess, product or our own sort of network. So we came out with HashSphere. That was earlier this year. And that was a private network built with Hedera powered technology. So now people who want to build private, so like regulated institutions and banks, they want private networks. They might still want to connect to the Hedera public network, but might not trust it because of what's going on in the crypto world. People are still, scared just based on what they read in the news. They don't quite understand the technology. So we wanted to offer them something that would then be able to bridge the two together. And then that's how HashSphere came around. So now Hashgraph is marketing its own network as well, but it's all about helping people build on the Hedera network itself. So it's kind of
the underlying network,
Yeah, it's a bit confusing, especially if you're not in the world of Web3 or blockchain or don't understand decentralization. But hopefully that's kind of simple enough for a general audience to understand.
Yeah. So what on a day-to-day, obviously you mentioned the content, some of the elements you're doing, what does that look like on a day-to-day, what you're working on?
So like, for example, today we've got an event coming up in 2 weeks' time. We're going to Sibos, which is a huge it's mainly traditional Web2 audiences. But we're going there in 2 weeks, and I had to review a video loop that we're going to play on the booth. So it's, video content. I'm more or less the project lead on all video projects that come through us. So that could be anything from like small animations all the way to, booth loops or bigger asks where we're kind of like editing interviews and things like that. So that's one form of content that I do quite a lot, and I kind of manage all of that. And then I've also been reviewing a plan for a byline for our CEO, Eric. And then I will be the first one to go and write that blog. So I come up with the ideas for these blogs being written by execs. I write them, and then I'll usually send it to either my manager or through to our PR agency to review. And then I kind of project manage that entire life cycle from like idea conception all the way through to publishing, whether it's on traditional media or like on a LinkedIn post, or if it's just on a blog on our Hedera. That's another type of thing I do. I then do a lot of social.
It's funny, isn't it? Sorry to interrupt. It's funny, isn't it? Yeah. I was just talking to another marketing manager the other day, and when we were talking about this, about there's so much to do in the different aspects now, and even just within content already, you're talking about the written word and social media, and then creative assets like video, and you have to now cover all the different elements and different styles and different types of content, even just within content. Never mind SEO, geo, paid, all the different channels and platforms. So it's interesting how you have to be so much more rounded, I think, now.
Yeah, and especially in corporate marketing, there's also the whole ad stuff you've got to do. We do a lot of branded ads, and I'm kind of in charge of that, drafting up the content, coming up with the audiences and leading those campaigns. And as you say, the more visual things, we have graphic designers within our company, but then now streamline certain processes. I come up with content campaigns that will run on social media or as ads, and then we'll get them made into Canva templates. But then I'll be the one to always create the new asset and then publish it with social copy or the ad copy. So yeah, there's a there's a whole wide array of content that needs doing. And I think maybe that's what's slightly different in my specific role at this specific company, with the amount of brands that we're also managing as a single company, but we're not an agency that focuses on one thing like PR or like graphic design or this and that. We've got to do it all for different brands. I think that can definitely come with some challenges, but as a marketing manager, I think if you're a generalist, it's a lot more fun. I don't think I would like to be pushed down into one small avenue of things. So I think that's why that's why I fell into content, just because it does open up a lot more avenues for me to do a lot more things within marketing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's cool. I enjoy it. I mean, I said the other day, didn't I, when we had a quick chat, I mentioned I'm doing a lot more content myself now, just in terms of like social media, and this is one of the forms, obviously video and doing these interviews. So I've had to learn how to, do these kind of podcast style interviews with, Riverside that I'm using and using different sort of tools. But then there's more to it, even from you start learning about that, right? You need to do good thumbnails, and that's important. And then you're trying to, cut them up into magic clips or social posts and atomize them like that. So that takes time. So there's learning. So it's good. It's just, it's hard sometimes as well. You're learning all the time, but it's hard to be quick when you're learning these things and different skills as well. And it's not your kind of everyday thing. So that's sometimes a challenge. But I suppose speaking of challenges, I mean, obviously on these kind of calls, what I like to do is find out if there's any challenges you can talk about, or maybe it's where you've turned it into a good campaign or anything like that, or even just anything you've seen, you're seeing at the moment that you think people are struggling with, or you're hearing that people are struggling with. Is there anything like that you think that you're hearing a lot of that people are perhaps struggling with at the moment? Maybe social.
I think, it's probably coming back to the whole content thing. People just need more and more content. And I know AI is great at helping produce more and more content, but there's still a lack of understanding of how AI actually helps and what people can actually do with AI to make content that isn't obviously AI generated. As someone that writes blogs and op-eds, you're really, really sensitive to when you can read something that's quite obviously chat GPT'd, especially on social media. And as I said, like in blogs, even when sometimes we receive blogs from, I don't know, other people in the company that are obviously busy, it's not their own lane to be writing these blogs, but you just read these things, you're just like, oh my gosh, there are so many end dashes in here. You've been on chat GPT, that kind of thing, and reading on social media as well, these long posts that execs and CEOs are now posting more and more of. It's just people are losing that authenticity and that creative spark that I think really makes good marketers. And it's a shame that some people just don't understand how to leverage AI, because you should be using AI if you are a marketer, because we need more content and we need more good content, but you don't want to be churning out things that lose that authenticity and that spark because you just don't know how to use it. I think that's one major challenge. I think I mentioned it last time because it was a fresh article in my mind that I had read from the FT or something like that, where the generation above Gen Z, maybe like a few millennials and like above that, there's a big, I don't know, taboo around ChatGPT and AI, and a shame around using it. So if you're like using it at work in the office, you'll sort of have it in a hidden tab if someone walks past and click away. Whereas people my age, the Gen Z lot, and I'm sure it'll be the same going down, it's the same thing as just searching something up on Google. If you're not using ChatGPT, it's, you're losing out massively.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, what's different than just doing your research on Google, really? But yeah. I mean, that's an interesting point. I mean, obviously, and now you have to kind of produce more content, don't you, as well, especially with things like LinkedIn from a business perspective, and leaders in business, you kind of have to be putting more content out there, don't you? So is that something you've seen from people? Is that something you?
Yeah, definitely. I think going back to the AI thing, a lot of the time these execs, because they don't have the time to understand AI, they're not creating custom GPTs or anything like that they probably should be leveraging. But I've definitely noticed an uptake in exec-led branding and exec-led based marketing. I've been talking to a lot of friends who run their own companies and already thinking about their own personal brands to start nurturing their personal brand to then nurture the company's own brand, just because once again, it builds authenticity in customers. I think, I'm not sure if you've seen it going around LinkedIn. It's kind of been everywhere. PayPal, like putting out a content role for their CEO specifically for something like
All right, no.
$200,000.
Wow, no, I've not seen that.
Yeah, it's this crazy job ad that's been going around. So PayPal CEO is going to pay someone 200K a year to manage his LinkedIn and his LinkedIn content and anything thought leadership based. It's kind of crazy where it's signaling kind of a shift where companies are now just investing heavily in their leaders as influencers. So it's going back to that old influencer based marketing, but they're turning senior level execs and CEOs into those influencers rather than paying external influencers to boost up your brand. It's now, these are brand leaders in the company. Why not use them?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you do see it, you know, those leaders, their content does get a lot more engagement. A lot. I mean, obviously, you know, you've got a lot of people trying to kind of connect with them and like and engage with their posts just to be seen almost by them and to connect with them. But you see like that, they do get that amplification, don't they? Than sort of the regular Joe like me.
Yeah. I mean, you can just be a regular Joe though. And I think if you've got the right content and it's the right thought leadership and you start building that niche of being a subject matter expert in your area, people will come to you for that content because they'll start to trust you and they'll want to know more from what you're seeing in your industry and your role. And people just want to relate to you. So if they find someone that they enjoy reading that content, you'll definitely grow.
Yeah. I suppose I just meant you can even like you see it even with like really poor content that's like just pretty naff, but it gets a lot of engagement. Certainly, if it's posted by certain people, you know, certain high profile people or leaders in sort of big companies, they it gets a lot more engagement than you'd probably expect it to, just because of who they are. It just gets that amplification,
and because once again, the other point of sort of building your own brand is by engaging with other big brands. So people will just see someone that's big and inherently engage with whatever they post because
piggyback
it in turn makes them. It's just sort of bootstrapping on top of that.
Yeah. So you were mentioning last time you do a little bit of work in this space, don't you? Separate to your normal role, your day-to-day role. What's that?
I do it as part of my role. So our CEO, as I mentioned, I kind of manage a lot of what he puts out on his LinkedIn, all of his thought leadership pieces. But then as a contractor, I do have the flexibility to also help and support other founders, and they tend to be founders of small-based startups that might be building, quietly. They're not quite out there yet, but these people are interested in building their own personal brands, don't quite know what to do because they have never had a marketing role in their life. They just don't understand content, don't understand social media. They just know that they need to be on there. And I'm just kind of there to be that helping hand and teach them the right tools and how to use those tools into start building up that brand and building up their persona as a thought leader, so that then hopefully when they start becoming a trusted voice in their industry, in their specific market, when they do go to launch their product, or their product might already be out in the market but not big enough, hopefully it will help with that business development side of things. So when they are reaching out to potential customers, people will just inherently trust them from the get-go because they've been following them, or they see they've got followers, see they've got a good presence on LinkedIn. And nowadays people definitely rely a lot on that than they did before.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I'm doing right now.
Nice. Yeah. So you must have lots of good tips for people out there then struggling with this right now. What are your best tips? What are your top tips for them? What's your advice?
Top tips is to not go and, post content overload. I think you want to post consistently, but you don't just want to post whatever comes into your head or whatever you think you should be posting. You need to be.
That's what I kind of do right now.
I think there's a time and a place for it just to get traction, but you should be if you are doing that, you should be testing it, because if it's working, it's working. But what I tend to see is that you still want a lot of quality posts just to prove that you are that thought leader. So what you do say and when you say it, it definitely matters. I think people need to bring in real human experiences. That's one type of post. But then there's also the type of post where it proves that you are constantly aware of what's happening in the market, in your industry, and then you add further thought to that. So if there's something that's been written in, BBC News or The Guardian or anything, or like a really niche specific medical journal that is in your industry, you should be writing your opinion on those reports, on those articles, and coming out with something completely new or something that adds value to that story. That's where I think there's real value from that thought leadership.
Okay.
I think people shouldn't just be posting for the sake of posting. You want to build up that thought leadership.
Okay, so I'm kind of doing that then. That makes me feel a bit better. I'm kind of doing some of what you said there. I'm when you said first thing pops into your head, usually it might be a meeting, it might be a conversation, something, an idea or a piece of advice or a cool thing that I've heard or seen, and I just note it down, and then that's my ideation phase really. And then from those ideas in notes, I might sort of think it through a bit more and put some thought against it or opinion against it, or just even expand on the story of what the conversation was and what the context was, or what the piece of advice was. And then from there, I build it out. And I think the key point there, what you said as well, that's definitely been a different thing for me, where variety of content, so not just the same type of content. Sometimes it's a thought that I've had or an opinion. Sometimes it might be something I've seen. Sometimes it might be something good that I've seen or something bad that I've seen, or, so variety of sort of scenarios of the types of content, and not just, I don't just mean format, imagery and video and things like that, but the type of content I'm sort of producing and what I'm talking about might be from different sort of scenarios. And I think the big thing for me as well was almost a mindset shift, where I think previously I was trying to write from the perspective of how do I write something for the business? How, especially in sort of sales and marketing roles, I was always thinking, how can I write something that is kind of sales related or, marketing the business, and that was my mindset. That was what I was trying to do. Whereas now, by just in that kind of daily life of conversations or meetings or scenarios or situations, the topics and the stories that come out from those, that's what I'm talking about. And yes, sometimes they're dotted with advice or recommendations or top tips or whatever it may be, but they're from that position of just talking about the various things, and they're usually in the right topic. They're usually all related to digital. That's the conversations I'm having. So they're in the realms of what our business does. They're not always exactly like why you should be doing or why you should be doing like stuff that's really so obvious. Like that's what I used to be kind of trying to do. Like trying to write something so that people go, right, I need what you're selling. Whereas now I just talk about the different stories that are all related around marketing and digital. But
well, that's the number one thing you always learn when you join any PR agency or content thing. When you're writing thought leadership, you always want to avoid self-serving sales talk. That's just the number one thing, because especially you're not necessarily doing the journalists on social media, but it's still the same concept where these people will just turn away straight away because they see what your motive is. And it's kind of like, it comes across sort of like money grabbing or, like sleazy sales guy, whereas that's not what you are. You want to, speak relatably so that your followers trust your expertise, and then later down the line will trust your business. And I think is what you mentioned before, thinking about conversations you've had, and it just sort of turns out to be part of the overall conversation that could then lead to people being interested in your business. It's just about sharing those authentic experiences that people can then relate to and just foster that community. And then once you've fostered that community and that engagement, that's when you start building up your personal and then your company reputation.
Yeah, nice. Yeah. Okay, so there's some good tips there. Anything else? Any other key things you think that people should be doing and these leaders or C-suite leaders in businesses?
I think showing your face is a great thing. Anytime we post from our company websites or, social media, LinkedIn, whatever, the pictures of our execs with their articles or, a little quote from them about something that's happened in the industry, they always get the most engagement. Even if it's just, pictures of you with someone or pictures of you from an event, or then later down the line doing video content where people not just see your face, but hear your voice, see your personality. Those are the real things that people start to engage with a lot more. It's the same thing on all types of social media, but we're obviously talking about LinkedIn. People love consuming video content. So it's just a no-brainer, really, if you do want to, if you're serious about building your brand on LinkedIn, you should start talking to your followers, whether it's, podcast, or just literally a short clip, you should be doing that.
Yeah. Yeah, that was where this came about, really. These videos, I was having these conversations, and at first I started taking those conversations and those stories and putting them out in the written word, if you like. And then I was like, how do I make it more engaging? I saw, pictures and imagery was working better for sure. And that was where the thought came, well, maybe I could have these conversations on video, and then it produces that content as well. Yeah. And that's definitely helped. Yeah. I definitely see more engagement from those.
Yeah. It's sad that it's changed, that people just don't have the time to read things anymore, but people are way more likely to watch or listen to a clip than they are than read a long post that says the same thing. But people are lazy nowadays, and because social media has short form content and they want quick hits fast, they're just going to head straight to that picture where, their brain's automatically lit up versus seeing blank, boring text. But yeah,
it's really weird though, isn't it? Because you've got these kind of two elements of it where we all kind of want those short clips, like YouTube Shorts is like, that's where you get all the traffic and all the visitors now. But then you do also on the flip side have the kind of longer form podcasts, if you like the the Joe Rogan and people like that, which are doing like 3-hour conversations, which do also get, and I watch them, and I watch them over a period, usually over a few days maybe, but you kind of want that bite size content, but then when you find what you like, I suppose then maybe that's where I don't know, it's interesting. I'm not sure why that is.
But what those guys as well are doing, so people love to hear the full conversations. We say like people are driving to work or they're going on long walks and, it's the commute, you're listening and watching to things there. But now what people are doing is, you mentioned what you did earlier, people are cutting them up into shorter clips and giving them that bite. And then people will want to listen to the whole episode to hear that small section, or be like, why was he talking about that small section? That's where AI comes in handy, filtering and sorting out those viral clips that then people will then turn to that longer thought leadership format of content.
Yeah, definitely. I've recently launched the YouTube channel with just starting to put these videos on, and the shorts are what gets all the traffic though as well, which is interesting, that rather than the full video at the moment, obviously, because I've not really got that awareness and that sort of following, but the shorts they're getting seen, they're getting the visibility, and they're getting a lot of views. So yeah, that's certainly seems like the key to grow the channel even and grow that following. So yeah, interesting.
And as a content manager as well, someone that has to create as much content as possible, if you've done these long form pieces of video or podcast or blogs, if there's any way to leverage AI to then cut these things up into bite-sized chunks that then can be sent out more gradually as pieces of content to keep engagement high, that's such an easy win.
Yeah, that's where Riverside has been quite good. I found it quite good from that perspective. That is one of the things that I have liked. It has these magic clips that it automatically creates. And then you have to obviously watch them, and some of them are maybe not right, but it creates quite a few of them. It might create, I thought, sort of 8 or 9. I don't know how many exactly, but it kind of creates a lot of them. And then you can watch and pick which are the really good ones. And some of them tend to be quite good, I've found. And then you can can craft some content, some copy around it quite easily as well. Because it's broken them up into like 1-minute clips.
Yeah, no, I love that. And that's one big part of my role as content manager, taking all of the content we have and then reusing it and repurposing it to the max. So I do a lot of work with Veed and Opus, which are AI cutting tools for videos. And
which was that, sorry?
Once again, leverage ChatGPT.
Which was that, sorry?
And Opus.
Veed and Opus, yeah. Opus Clip, I've heard, yeah.
Yeah, so I now use Veed a lot just because Opus does just clips, whereas Veed is also a video editing tool on top of it. So I use that. I'm literally in there most days.
All right, so you have to use them both together, Veed and Opus Clip. So Opus is just to do the magic clips, is it?
No, Veed does do magic clips. So I used to use Opus, but now I'm on Veed because it has the clip stuff and it has other editing tools, or like you can create AI avatars. Yeah, it's great.
Oh, nice. I might try that. I might have a look at that one then. Yeah, cool. Any other top tips before we wrap up? I think there's some good ones there.
I feel like just don't be scared to get yourself out there. I know a lot of people are just still a bit timid and shy on social media, or think it's a bit cringe, but we've definitely shifted in our world where if you're not doing things in the public and you're keeping things private, it's not going to add any value. Nothing will move. So quiet work doesn't equal growth, basically. So if you're public, that will drive momentum and build open doors, hopefully build revenue at some point. But yeah, don't do things in quiet.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great one. I've certainly found that. I kind of, and you know, he's always kind of afraid to post and worrying about whether it was right and whether it was, you know, and the problem is you improve and you learn as you're doing it. Hopefully I am. Hopefully my content's getting better, but you kind of certainly get more confident with it. You get more of a rhythm. So I think I'm improving, but you know, and it becomes easier, it becomes quicker. So, but if you're not doing it, it's always hard. If you're doing it, like you say, not very regular. So get into that regular rhythm and flow.
And it still also takes time. You can't expect to get a viral post in your first week or to grow followers within the first month of posting. You just need to stay consistent and keep at it. And I think that's where a lot of people flop, because they don't see immediate results and then they just think, oh, what's the point? Get lazy again. And then we'll start posting ad hoc, not add value, and then wonder even more, why isn't this working? So as you say, just consistency and just keep going at it.
Yeah, it's like waiting to be perfect, but you can't go from not doing something to just be perfect at it. You have to learn, you have to try these things. You improve as you're doing it, you're testing, you're finding what works, you're getting better at it, you're getting quicker at it. It becomes easier for you. It just all kind of flows. I think if you're sat there not doing it, you just won't ever get to where you're trying to get to, I think. So that's a brilliant tip. Certainly what I found. And it comes a lot easier to me now. I produce content quicker. The ideation happens just all the time, like on a daily basis. I'm making notes of things that come up, and you build this library, and then it becomes easier and there's more things to talk about. Otherwise, you're always sat there going, what do I talk about? And then when you do have an idea, you kind of fall into this kind of fear of not being perfect, and then you never post, and you just don't get over that hurdle. Just got to get out your own way almost. Yeah. Brilliant.
Great.
Brilliant. That's a nice place to finish, I think. Unless there was anything else you wanted to touch on, but that sounds good. You've been an absolute star, Tamsin. You're a absolute pro at this, and it's been great talking to you. I've really enjoyed it. So hopefully we'll get to do it another time when once I've improved a bit over the next year, maybe we can have another call.
And we'll see though. When you're a big influencer on LinkedIn, I'll be begging you to come on your podcast.
Yeah. Fingers crossed. Thanks, Tamsin, and safe flight home.
Okay. Thank you.
Take care.
Right. Speak
Bye.
soon.
See you soon. Thanks.
Right.